Hello and welcome once again to Planet 40k. Today is a Necron day and this time we're going to be doing something a little bit different. In fact, I must shout out the person for the concept of today's video. So this shout out is going to Nerd with a Bow, and he basically made a comment to me suggesting that I either do a list analysis of the Grand Tournament players and or the members of the channel. So that's actually two ideas in one there, but I really was quite interested in looking at the list builds from our Planet 40k members within the members area of the channel. So if you haven't seen our members area, or you've ever wondered why some of the subscribers within the comments have a badge next to their name, it's because they've joined our members area. So either click on the channel or find the link in the description and click the join button, and it'll give you some information on what to expect if you were to join. We've got several different tiers within there now. We've recently added some new ones. So this is how our members are getting the custom emojis and the loyalty badges next to their name. You can join for as little as 99 pence. I'm not sure what that looks like in other currencies, but you'll have to let me know in the comments what it looks like in dollars and whatnot. But either way, it's less than a cup of coffee, that's for sure. It also massively helps the channel. A channel of this size gets absolute peanuts in terms of YouTube revenue. Unless you're one of the big players on the platform, it's very difficult, especially in the early years. Okay, so the concept today is very simple. I've mailed a few of our members and asked them to kindly send in a Necron list of their choosing. It could be any points cost, it could be any dynasty, completely up to them. Then I'm going to be going through their list. I'm going to be talking about all the things I like, all the things I don't like. Maybe I'll implement some amendments that I'd quite like to do, but ultimately it's about getting the community involved with different ideas, playstyles, and against different metas too, depending on their opponents. So I'm going to begin with the first list, which is coming from WRAITHS. I'm certain you're going to have seen him in the comments. Virtually every video is first to comment. He's very dedicated to the channel, very punctual. So punctual in fact that a lot of commenters actually thought that he was a bot, which I thought was quite funny. So let's get on with his list. He's built a 2000 point Necron list. Now he's actually finished the list at 1990 points. So it's a triple detachment. Now the first detachment within this triple detachment is a Supreme Command detachment, which of course has the Silent King in it. He's going to be costing you 450 points, and it has no cost in terms of command points to field this detachment. In fact, the Silent King actually nets you 3 command points in the bank if he's your warlord, which he has to be. And of course he's going to be using the Zerakan dynasty. As for his actual warlord, he's got the Triarch's Will, so you can actually use one of the command protocols twice in the actual battle instead of one. So with this trait, it's very likely that this list is going to be using the protocol of Hungry Void for 2 battle rounds, especially with this list. Mini spoiler, he has gone melee. So that protocol in particular is going to help with a melee army, because when the protocol is active, melee attacks that wound on a 6 will gain an extra AP, and with Directive 2, when you make a charge move or heroically intervene, they're going to get a +1 to their strength characteristics. Now he's also got the ability to hold one of the command protocols in reserve because of the Voice of the Triarch ability. So for this battle, that protocol that's going to be held back is the Protocol of Conquering Tyrant. It's going to add 3 inches to the range of all the aura abilities to a maximum of 12, or if using Directive 2, units can fall back and still shoot. So you'll see why in a moment why that protocol will be held back. As for the next attachment, it's an Outrider attachment, so that's going to cost you 3 command points to field, and it only requires a single HQ along with a minimum of 3 fast attack units. Now you're likely going to be fielding between 4 and 6 fast attack units, which is the whole point of fielding this detachment. So this detachment is actually going to be coming from the Novak dynasty, so it's going to be a +1 to the charge roll, and the first round of combat they're going to get an extra -1 AP. Now the HQ within this detachment is a Technomancer with a CANOPTEK control node for the synergy with other CANOPTEK units, giving nearby CANOPTEK units a +1 to their hit rolls. So this is why he's reserved that command protocol, because that control node is an aura, and it's going to be increased to a 9-inch aura during that battle round. Now he's adding a pair of Cryptophrolls into the mix to defend the Technomancer, as they're going to be a shield from range attacks for the Cryptek, and they're also providing a decent amount of attacks at range and in melee for the actual points they cost. Those bucket bots won't be taking up a detachment slots as you've got that Cryptek. Now the main bulk of the Outrider detachment, as mentioned, is the fast attack slot. I personally think is our strongest battlefield role within our codex. So he's gone with 4 identical units of CANOPTEK Wraiths. 5 Wraiths per unit. Each unit comes as stock, so just the Vicious Claws there. So each one's going to be costing 175 points per unit, which is actually something I tend to use quite often. When you pair the Novak code with the CANOPTEK Wraiths, they're going to be quite aggressive, so all getting that +1 to the charge and getting some added extra AP in the first round of combat. Furthermore, if those CANOPTEK Wraiths are within 6 inches of the Technomancer, they'll of course be hitting on 3s instead of 4s with those strength 6 attacks. Also worth remembering that command protocol's tactic at this stage, likely using that Hungry Void, because the Wraiths can fall back and charge, which makes Directive 2 pretty interesting, because they're going to be getting that extra strength on the charge. So those Vicious Claws are going to become in Strength 7 weapons. Now moving into the third and final detachment, which is another Outrider detachment, which is also from the Novak dynasty. So again, we need to expect some fast attack options here. This one's going to be costing you another 3 command points, and keeping it from the Novak dynasty keeps the bookkeeping nice and simple. So the HQ running this detachment is a CATACOMB command barge. With a Gauss cannon, it's coming in at 160 points. Now the model will have the rarefied nobility stratagem used on it pre-game to gain a second warlord trait within the force. And the actual warlord trait that's going to be taken is Enduring Will. So each time an attack is allocated to this warlord, you subtract 1 from the damage characteristic to a minimum of 1. So it adds a nice bit of resiliency there to a model that's already got quantum shielding as well as 9 wounds, so will happily also benefit from the Lookout Sir bubble if required. He's going to be taking a relic which upgrades his Staff of Light to a Voltaic Staff. Pretty standard stuff there. A lot of Necron players, including myself, take this relic on the command barge. I've displayed what the Voltaic Staff is if you're not aware, but it kind of feels like you've got a Tesla weapon because it's got exploding 6s, but it also feels like a Gauss weapon because it's got that -2 to the AP, and it's also 2 damage a pop, which makes it quite valuable. So next is gone for my personal favourite from the elite section. It's gone for a Catan Shard of the Nightbringer. Just an all-round beast in my opinion. Yes, it's 370 points, but he absolutely slaps. The 2 abilities in particular that I really love, the Necrodermis. So the model's got a 4+ invulnerable save, but more importantly, the Catan Shard cannot lose more than 3 wounds in a given phase, which gives it so much more resiliency. Then of course that Drain Life ability, so when using melee attacks, you're going to be ignoring those Feel No Pain saves, which seems to be more commonplace at the moment. And it's particularly good when you're using it on a Strength 14 weapon, because that weapon itself actually ignores the invulnerable saves, so you'll be removing any save whatsoever, and it's -5 AP. So there'll be no invuln saves, there'll be no Feel No Pain saves, there'll be no regular saves. So he's just a total monster there. As for the Catan power selected, he's going to be coming with the Gaze of Death, which is unique to the Nightbringer. So he's selecting an enemy unit within 9 inches and visible to the Catan Shard. You roll 3d6, and for each 4+, that unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. And then the actual chosen selection is going to be Antimatter Meteor. So you roll 1d6 to the closest enemy unit within 24 inches, and on a roll of a 3, 4 or 5, that unit's going to be suffering 3 mortal wounds, and on a 6+, the unit's going to be suffering d3 + 3 mortal wounds. It's also worth mentioning the 2 stratagems that will be available for this Catan Shard. The first one being Strange Echoes, which just allows you to simply change up one of your Catan powers for the rest of the battle. Maybe if you didn't quite like that Gaze of Death ability, you can change that one up for something that's got a longer range, or maybe you want to remove the Antimatter Meteor for something that's got a smaller range. There's also Dimensional Destabilization, which I use almost every turn to get an additional power for that movement phase, so he'll be popping off 3 powers instead of 2. Okay, so on to the fast attack then. Again, we're going to expect some fast attack slots here being filled up. He's gone with 4 identical units of CANOPTEK Scarab Swarms. Each unit's going to be a minion of 3, costing 45 points per unit. This is where he's scoring all of his points. They aren't there for the damage output with their melee attacks, they simply jump onto objectives, and if needed they can blow up with a self-destruction stratagem, and also be a very good speed bump if needed, especially if you want to be screening off other units within your army. So this third detachment is going to be costing 710 points in total. So the first one is 450 with a Silent King, the second Outrider detachment with all the race was 830 points, and the one with the Nightbringer is 710, so that's costing 1990 points as we stated at the beginning of the video. So let's try and analyse this list then. So first of all, I've noticed that there's not a single troop option in sight, which is a pleasant surprise really. So many lists, including my own list, have tons and tons of warriors and immortals, so to see none of them in there is pretty different. Now there's not actually much range attacks here, but the Nightbringer kind of makes up for the lack of range with all the powers, and they're straight to mortal wounds too. I love the use of the CANOPTEK WRAITHS, especially in numbers. Those invuln saves in particular are very key here. A few things I'm unsure within the list. First of all, without the actual full tactics summary, it's kind of hard to tell how this is going to play. But looking from afar, a Technomancer moves at 5 inches, whereas the race move at 12. So I can see situations where the Technomancer either gets left behind or drags the race behind slightly, which means you may not be using full use of that control node perhaps, even if it does get boosted to a 9-inch radius. I personally would use the Rarefied Nobility stratagem a second time because it's a Strike Force mission, and then give the Technomancer the Thrall of the Silent King Warlord trait to have a permanent 9-inch aura rather than only having it for a single battle round with a command protocol up his sleeve. Or potentially you could use the Dimensional Sanctum Arcana for the Technomancer for the ability to deep strike and meet your wraiths in a better location. However, that would mean that your Crypto Thralls are going to have a bit of a problem because they can't follow in. Maybe that's that's why they're there, so the Wraiths can go on slightly ahead and the Technomancer will soon arrive. I'm also unsure of how many of those units of Wraiths are going to be within 6 inches of the Technomancer. I'd highly doubt all 4 units are going to be buffed, as this would likely concede board control. Now with the Novak code in play, this can be deadly, but potentially I'd be using the Nihilak Dynasty or Returnal Conquerors if you're going custom. Could be more useful on a more aggressive army, trying to steal objectives in particular. However, this would give up the Bloodright stratagem, which could be something that is going to be using because he's got the Novak code on, which gives an extra attack for Novak units. Now if I was to remove some units, I personally would probably remove the Technomancer, and I'd add either one of the following. I'd either go with the Plasmancer or a Locust Lord or a Scorpic Lord. Let me go through all 3 of those options. The Plasmancer with the Cryptophiles or the Deep Strike Arcana is probably going to have the same sort of effect, to be honest, but his damage output from the 2 abilities could make up for the Technomancer's +1 to the hit rolls for those Wraiths potentially. But again, I question how many of those Wraiths are going to be buffed. So those 2 abilities, Living Lightning and the Harbinger of Destruction, are going to be throwing out mortal wounds, especially the Harbinger of Destruction because that's got a 24-inch range. Now the Locust Lord, he can keep up with the Wraiths, and you're going to be saving 40 points from the Cryptophiles too. I'd take the Phylactery and a War Scythe, and it's going to be costing you 150 points as opposed to 130 with the Technomancer and those bucket bots. Or if you wanted to go for a Scorpic Lord, which is actually the exact same points at 130, he also just about keeps up. He can shoot, he can fight pretty well, and in combat he's got his Strength 6 Blending Claws, which are pretty solid against the current meta, and that's with 8 attacks that hit on 2s and reroll 1s. He's also rerolling 1s to wound too, so against Battle Sisters or Cabal Warriors for example, that's going to do bits. Hitting on 2s rerolling, wounded on 2s rerolling with 8 attacks. With the Novak code it's going to be a -2 AP as well. And then he's got that Strength 8 profile if needed. Now I've barely got any criticism for the second Outrider detachment. Scarabs are fantastic, the Nightbringer is fantastic, the Command Barge is fantastic, but it's even better when you're making max use of the abilities that he carries. In particular the My Will Be Done ability, because there's no core units within this list to buff. Tombblades could have worked, and of course Warriors too, but he's gone for the melee approach, so I do get that. Potentially could have taken a Veil of Darkness relic on a different character and walked in some Lich Guard perhaps, or the Barge could have met the Lich Guard unit in a location ready for a fight so that you don't have to give up that Voltaic staff for that Veil of Darkness as mentioned. Now the Command Barge is great, but it's in a slightly awkward place at the moment due to its speed, so I think Tombblades would have been the best option for it, but as already mentioned, he's gone melee. I'm not actually sure what's going to be accompanying the Barge, whether it's some of the Wraiths for the Lookout Sir bonus, or the Catan Shard as it's a monster, or it could be the Swarms, but those Scarabs are likely going to be peeling off to create some blockages or to hold some primaries. To the final piece of the jigsaw, which is the Silent King. Now it's quite a tricky one to analyse in this list. Similar to the Command Barge, he's not really buffing anything, so you're not getting that max usage out of the 450 points. Remember that he's got the double My Will Be Done ability due to the Pharaon ability, and that's going to be going to waste. Again, there's no core and there's no Praetorians either. So to be honest, the Silent King is his own unique entity. He's an all-round powerhouse that can shoot, that can fight, he can shut down psychers. He's not an easy nut to crack, and even if your opponent does manage it, it means the rest of your army will likely be unscathed, as the Silent King has soaked up everything your opponent's got to offer. So you could potentially see this as a 450 point distraction Carnifex, which at first seems quite pricey as an investment for a sacrificial lamb, but he will be removing models on his way down, reclaiming his own points back, and why this works so well in this list particularly is because he's also fielding a Nightbringer. Now this Nightbringer cannot be ignored, it can only lose 3 wounds per phase, so ignoring it for even one phase will be a mistake on your opponent's part. The mortal wound carnage that this thing does alongside the Silent King's all round goodness is going to mean your opponent will be totally ignoring the most important part of this list, which is the CANOPTEK Swarms. I keep saying this in so many videos, the CANOPTEK Swarms are the units that win you game after game after game. They get ignored and they score big. I now understand why he's taken so many Wraiths as well now, because anything that has a ranged threat to the Silent King or the Nightbringer is going to get charged, is going to get tied up by the Wraiths, and your opponent will only have one way of likely getting to your Silent King and the Nightbringer, which will be fight their way through the Wraiths, and they've all got in-run saves, all while the Silent King and the Nightbringer are absolutely murdering their army. So it's not going to be an easy task for them at all. But yeah, I would consider changing the Technomancer and the Cryptophiles and the Barge as well. I think that will come to 295 points, and you began the list with 10 points spare, don't forget, so that would be 305 points, but you do need 2 HQs to put back in. So I think 2 Scorpic Lords could work, and that will actually leave 45 points for possibly another unit of Scarabs. Just an idea there. You'll have to test it out and let me know, unless there's something I'm missing. Now he did actually email me mentioning that you don't have to just use the Novak code for the 2 Outrider detachments. You could instead use the Zarakan Dynasty for that Feel No Pain save against mortal wounds, as well as that reroll to the wound rolls per unit per phase, and of course better access to the Empiric Damping stratagem army wide to shut down enemy psychers. But both Outrider detachments would need to be from the same dynasty in order to gain the Command Protocols ability, from your Necron list. So that's your As Ist X 2000 points list build with my spin on the list, of course. Now remember, if you want to get involved in this type of stuff, then check out our members area. It's not actually listed as one of the perks, but when I can, I try to give back to the paid members, and this is also made for a useful video for us all, including myself, to learn from. So the next video within this mini-series, which I've not actually named yet, will be another list from another one of our members, so keep your eyes out for that one. Also, if you stumbled upon the video today, do me a huge favour and consider subscribing below. It doesn't cost you anything at all, and it's a way of really assisting the channel with its growth, as the YouTube algorithm can be a real hard ass when it comes to videos. So yeah, that's it from me today, guys. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.